Bullies tore her shirt in front of friends. She broke his nose instantly. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Riverside High School as Kaya Thorne adjusted her oversized sweater for the third time in 10 minutes. Her slight frame seemed to disappear within the fabric, and her dark hair fell like a curtain around her angular face, creating a barrier between herself and the world. Students flowed around her like water around a stone, their voices creating a constant hum that she had learned to tune out over the past semester since transferring from Oregon. Kaya clutched her worn backpack straps tighter as she navigated toward the main building, her eyes fixed on the ground. She had perfected the art of invisibility, or so she thought, moving through the hallways like a ghost. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, speaking in the melodic cadence of her native Korean. Like bamboo, granddaughter, bend so you do not break. The wisdom felt hollow now, especially when she spotted the familiar cluster of Letterman jackets near the gymnasium entrance. Well, well, look who decided to grace us with her presence, came the voice that had haunted her dreams for weeks. Bryce Kellerman stood with his usual entourage, his perfectly styled blonde hair catching the fluorescent lights. At 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders earned from years of football, he commanded attention wherever he went. His pale blue eyes held a cruel glint that Kaya had come to recognize as the precursor to another day of torment. Behind him stood his constant companions. Jake Morrison, whose red hair and freckled face might have looked friendly on anyone else, but whose sneer had become as familiar as his shadow. And Tyler Banks, dark-skinned and athletic, who seemed to find genuine amusement in the daily ritual of humiliation. They were the untouchable elite of Riverside High, their status protected by championship trophies and family connections that reached deep into the town's social fabric. "Hey, skeleton girl!" Bryce called out, using the nickname that had somehow stuck after someone noticed how her collarbones protruded slightly from her thin frame. "Did you eat anything today, or are you still surviving on air and sadness?" The small crowd that had gathered laughed, and Kaya felt the familiar burn of shame spread across her cheeks. She quickened her pace, hoping to slip past them, but Jake stepped sideways, blocking her path with practiced ease. "Where are you going so fast?" Jake's voice carried a false friendliness that made Kaya's stomach clench. "We're just trying to be nice, maybe offer you a sandwich or something." "I'm fine," Kaya whispered, her voice barely audible above the ambient noise of the hallway. She tried to step around him, but Tyler moved to block her other side, trapping her in a semicircle of malicious grins. "Fine," Bryce repeated, his voice rising in mock surprise. "Look at you. You're practically transparent. I bet I could lift you with one hand." He reached out as if to demonstrate, and Kaya flinched backward, bumping into the lockers behind her. The metallic clang echoed through the hallway, and more students began to gather, sensing the familiar spectacle. Mrs. Henderson walked past, her heels clicking against the linoleum, but her eyes remained fixed straight ahead. Like most of the faculty, she had mastered the art of selective blindness when it came to the social hierarchies that governed student life. "Please," Kaya managed, her voice stronger now but still trembling. "I just want to get to class." "Just want to get to class," Tyler mimicked in a high-pitched voice, causing another wave of laughter from the growing audience. "What class? Advanced disappearing?" Kaya's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she forced herself to remain still. Her grandmother's training had taught her that true strength came from discipline, from knowing when to fight and when to endure. But more than that, she understood the delicate balance of her situation. One wrong move, one moment of lost control, and everything would change in ways she couldn't predict. The harassment continued as it always did, with calculated cruelty designed to humiliate without crossing lines that would bring administrative intervention. They knocked her books from her hands, stepped on her papers, and maintained a constant stream of commentary about her appearance, her family, and her presumed inadequacies. Through it all, Kaya remained silent, gathering her scattered belongings and moving through her day like a ship weathering a storm. By lunchtime, she had retreated to her usual sanctuary, the far corner of the library where the reference books created a natural barrier between her and the rest of the world. The librarian, Mr. Peterson, was one of the few adults who seemed to notice her existence, occasionally offering a kind word or a book recommendation. Today, however, even his gentle presence couldn't ease the weight that had settled in her chest. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through messages from her best friend back in Portland, each notification a reminder of the life she had left behind. The photos showed familiar faces, laughing at inside jokes she no longer shared, living experiences she could only observe from a distance. The isolation felt complete, a perfect storm of geographic displacement and social exile. "Excuse me," a voice interrupted her brooding. Kaya looked up to see a girl with warm brown eyes and curly auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun. She recognized her from advanced chemistry class, but had never spoken to her directly. "I'm Emma Rodriguez. Mind if I sit?" Kaya nodded, surprised by the request. Emma settled into the chair across from her, pulling out her own lunch with casual confidence. "I saw what happened this morning," Emma said quietly, unwrapping a sandwich. "Those guys are such jerks. I'm sorry you have to deal with that." The kindness in her voice nearly broke through Kaya's carefully constructed defenses. "It's nothing I can't handle," she replied, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. "Nobody should have to handle that," Emma said firmly. "Have you thought about telling someone? A teacher, or maybe the principal?" Kaya shook her head. "It wouldn't help. They're careful not to do anything that would really get them in trouble. And their families." She trailed off, not wanting to voice the futility she felt. Emma studied her for a moment, then smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you're stronger than you know. Sometimes the quietest people are the ones who surprise everyone." As the days passed, Emma's friendship became a lifeline. They sat together in chemistry class, studied in the library, and gradually Kaya began to feel less invisible. Emma had a way of drawing her out, asking about her life in Oregon, her interests, her dreams. For the first time since arriving at Riverside, Kaya felt like she might actually belong somewhere, but Bryce and his friends noticed the change too. They began to target Emma as well, making crude comments about her appearance and questioning why she would associate with the skeleton girl. Emma handled it with more grace than Kaya thought possible, deflecting their insults with sharp wit and refusing to be intimidated. "You know," Bryce said one afternoon as they passed Emma and Kaya in the hallway, "I didn't think anyone could find someone desperate enough to hang out with Bones over there. I guess I was wrong." "Maybe they're perfect for each other," Jake added with a nasty grin. "The scarecrow and the what?" Emma interrupted, stepping forward with her chin raised. "Go ahead, finish that thought, I dare you." The challenge hung in the air like a live wire. Bryce's eyes narrowed, clearly not used to being confronted so directly. "Careful, Rodriguez. You don't want to make this worse for yourself." "Or what?" Emma's voice remained steady, but Kaya could see the tension in her shoulders. "You'll what exactly? Push me around like you do her? Real brave, picking on people who won't fight back?" The crowd that had gathered sensed the shift in dynamics. This wasn't the usual one-sided harassment they had grown accustomed to witnessing. This was something different, something that crackled with potential consequences. Bryce stepped closer, his size advantage obvious. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." "Actually," Emma said, not backing down, "I think I have a pretty good idea. You're a coward who needs an audience to feel powerful. Without your little fan club, you're just another insecure kid who peaked in high school." The words hit their mark. Bryce's face flushed red, and for a moment it seemed like he might actually do something that would cross the line into territory the school couldn't ignore. But then Tyler placed a hand on his shoulder, and the moment passed. "We'll see about that," Bryce said finally, his voice low and dangerous. "Both of you." That evening, Kaya found herself pacing her bedroom, replaying the confrontation over and over. Emma's courage had been inspiring, but it had also escalated things in a way that felt dangerous. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Don't worry about today. They're all talk." But Kaya knew better. She had seen the look in Bryce's eyes, the way his jaw had clenched when Emma called him a coward. This wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. She walked to her closet and pushed aside the hanging clothes, revealing a collection of trophies and certificates hidden behind them. Junior Olympic Taekwondo championships, black belt certifications, tournament victories spanning 5 years of dedicated training. Her grandmother's legacy lived in those achievements, in the discipline and strength that had been forged through countless hours of practice. Her phone rang, and her grandmother's voice filled the room with its familiar warmth. "Little flower, you sound troubled. Tell me what weighs on your heart." Kaya found herself pouring out the entire story, from the daily humiliations to Emma's friendship to the growing tension. Her grandmother listened without interruption, the way she always did, letting the words flow until they were exhausted. "And you have told no one of your training," her grandmother said finally. "It wasn't a question." "You taught me that true strength is shown through restraint," Kaya replied, "that the greatest victory is the one that requires no battle." "Yes, child, but I also taught you that there comes a time when restraint becomes complicity, when silence enables cruelty. The bamboo bends, but it does not break, and when the storm passes, it stands tall again." The conversation continued late into the night, exploring the delicate balance between peace and justice, between turning the other cheek and standing up for what was right. By the time they hung up, Kaya felt something shifting inside her, a quiet resolve that had been building for weeks, finally crystallizing into purpose. The next morning brought an unseasonable warmth to the school grounds. Students had shed their heavy jackets, and the energy felt different, more volatile somehow. Kaya noticed the change immediately, the way conversations seemed more intense, glances more meaningful. Word had spread about yesterday's confrontation, and the entire school seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. She found Emma at their usual spot in the library, but something was off. Her friend's usual easy smile was strained, and there were dark circles under her eyes that suggested a sleepless night. "Everything okay?" Kaya asked, settling into the chair beside her. Emma hesitated, then pulled out her phone. The screen showed a series of messages, each one more vicious than the last. Anonymous accounts had bombarded her social media with cruel comments, altered photos, and threats. The harassment had followed her home, invaded her private space, and transformed her digital life into a battlefield. "They're really going after you," Kaya said quietly, scrolling through the messages. Her hands trembled slightly as she read words designed to wound, to isolate, to destroy. "I can handle it," Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. I didn't expect them to be so vicious or so coordinated." As if summoned by their conversation, Bryce and his friends appeared at the library entrance. They couldn't enter without risking Mr. Peterson's intervention, but they didn't need to. Their presence was message enough, a reminder that there was no real sanctuary, no place where their influence couldn't reach. Bryce caught Kaya's eye and smiled, the expression cold and calculating. He mouthed something that might have been soon or boom. The exact word didn't matter. The meaning was clear enough. The rest of the day passed in a haze of anticipation. Teachers noticed the tension, the way students seemed to cluster in groups, whispering with unusual intensity. But like always, they remained willfully oblivious to the undercurrents that shaped their students' lives. It was during the lunch period that everything finally came to a head. Kaya and Emma had found a quiet spot behind the gymnasium, away from the main crowd. They were sharing a bag of chips and talking about weekend plans when the laughter started. "Look what we have here," Bryce's voice cut through the afternoon air like a blade. The dynamic duo, hiding away like always. They approached with theatrical swagger, their movements coordinated like a pack of predators. Behind them trailed a larger group of students, drawn by the promise of spectacle. Someone had already started recording with their phone. "We thought you should know," Jake said, his voice dripping with false sincerity, "that we've been thinking about your little speech yesterday, Rodriguez. Really inspiring stuff." "Especially the part about us being cowards," Tyler added, his tone deceptively casual. "That really got to us, made us want to prove you wrong." Emma stood up, her chin raised defiantly. "I'm not afraid of you." "Maybe you should be," Bryce said, stepping closer. "See, the thing is, we can't let that kind of disrespect slide. Bad for our reputation, you know?" The circle of students tightened, and Kaya felt the familiar sensation of being trapped, of having no escape route. But this time was different. This time Emma was beside her, and the protective instinct that had been building for weeks suddenly blazed into something stronger. "Just leave us alone," Kaya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We haven't done anything to you." Bryce laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Haven't done anything? Your little girlfriend here called me a coward in front of half the school. That's not something I can let slide." "She was right," Kaya said, the words surprising everyone, including herself. "You are a coward. All of you." The silence that followed was complete, broken only by the distant sound of traffic and the whisper of wind through the trees. Bryce's face went through several shades of red before settling on a dangerous purple. "What did you just say?" "I said you're a coward," Kaya repeated, louder this time. "You pick on people who won't fight back because you're too scared to face anyone who might actually challenge you. You're pathetic." The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, phones raised, capturing every moment of what was clearly going to be a defining confrontation. Bryce's composure finally cracked. "You want to see pathetic? I'll show you pathetic." He lunged forward, his hands reaching for Kaya's sweater. The fabric tore with a loud ripping sound, exposing her thin shoulders and the modest tank top underneath. The crowd gasped, and someone laughed, but Kaya barely heard them. Something fundamental shifted inside her, like a dam breaking or a cage door swinging open. The months of humiliation, the daily erosion of her dignity, the sight of Emma's tears. It all crystallized into a single moment of perfect clarity. Bryce was still grinning, holding the torn fabric like a trophy when Kaya's fist connected with his nose. The sound was sharp and wet, like a branch snapping, and blood immediately began to flow. His head snapped back, and he stumbled, shock replacing the cruel amusement in his eyes. "Oh my God," someone breathed, and the crowd erupted in chaos. But Kaya wasn't finished. Years of training had taught her to see openings, to recognize when an opponent was vulnerable. As Bryce tried to regain his balance, she swept his legs, sending him crashing to the ground. The movement was fluid, economical, beautiful in its precision. Jake rushed forward, probably intending to help his friend, but Kaya spun to face him. Her stance was different now, balanced, centered, radiating a quiet confidence that made him hesitate. "Don't," she said simply, and something in her voice made him stop. Tyler took a step back, his bravado evaporating as he processed what he had just witnessed. This wasn't the scared, silent girl they had been tormenting. This was someone else entirely, someone who moved with deadly grace and spoke with unshakable authority. Bryce rolled over, blood streaming from his nose, and looked up at Kaya with a mixture of pain and disbelief. You broke my nose." "I could have broken a lot more," Kaya replied calmly. "But I chose not to. Remember that." She knelt beside him, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. "You want to know what pathetic looks like? It's lying on the ground, bleeding, because you picked on someone you thought was weak. It's spending so much time making other people feel small that you forgot how to be anything else." She stood up, brushing dirt from her knees, and looked around at the circle of stunned faces. "Anyone else want to try something?" The silence stretched on, broken only by Bryce's labored breathing and the distant sound of footsteps as teachers finally began to respond to the commotion. But Kaya wasn't done. She turned to face the crowd, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard. "I'm tired of being afraid," she said. "I'm tired of watching good people get hurt because the rest of us are too scared to do anything about it. This ends now." Emma stepped forward, her face glowing with admiration and something that might have been love. "Kaya, I should have done this weeks ago," Kaya said, taking Emma's hand. "I should have stood up for myself, for you, for everyone they've hurt. I'm sorry it took me so long." As the teachers arrived and began to restore order, as statements were taken and consequences discussed, the entire dynamic of Riverside High shifted. The untouchable elite had been touched and found wanting. The scared girl had revealed herself to be a warrior, and the warrior had shown mercy. In the weeks that followed, the changes were subtle but profound. Bryce returned to school with a splint on his nose and a considerably reduced entourage. His friends, having witnessed the swift and decisive nature of his defeat, began to distance themselves from the casual cruelty that had once defined their group. Emma and Kaya's friendship deepened into something more, their shared experience creating a bond that transcended the usual boundaries of high school relationships. They were seen together constantly, two people who had found in each other the courage to be authentically themselves. But perhaps the most significant change was in Kaya herself. The girl who had once tried to disappear now walked with quiet confidence, her head held high, her voice clear and strong. She had learned that true strength wasn't about having the power to hurt others. It was about having the courage to protect what mattered, even when that meant revealing parts of yourself you had kept hidden. The story of that day spread through the school like wildfire, growing and changing with each telling. But the core message remained constant. Sometimes the quietest people are the ones who surprise everyone. Sometimes the person you think is weakest is actually the strongest of all. And sometimes, when you stand up for what's right, you discover that you were never really alone in the first place.